Hello, Patriots, and welcome to the Missouri Rhino Watch Show, where it is our job to keep you informed of the happenings in your local and state government, because the most effective defense against tyranny is an informed citizenry. I'm your host, Joshua Lehman, and today we will be discussing the dereliction of duty by our Secretary of State, John Jay Ashcroft. Stay tuned because you will not want to miss this show. It is packed with all kinds of information to understand better the initiative petition process and the role of the Secretary of State.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.
We have an army of digital soldiers, what we call citizen journalists. And so the American people decided to take over the idea of information.
All right, Patriots, so today's conversation is again about the initiative petition process as well as the dereliction of duty by our Secretary of State, John Jay Ashcroft. So the initiative petition, for anybody that doesn't understand, is basically the opportunity for the populace, the Missouri populace, to come together and agree on an amendment or a new statute that would be put into our Constitution or our laws. And basically, it is done through signature aggregates. So with the initiative petition, like Amendment 3, which we will definitely discuss in this, they put it on a petition and they go around, usually with circulators, because that's how it's done. People pay money for people to go out and gather signatures. And if the signatures meet the threshold, then it goes before the Secretary of State. And then the Secretary of State's job is to ensure that it meets the statute requirements as in the revised statutes as well as in our Constitution. And so we're going to kind of get into the meat of it and how Jay Ashcroft dropped the ball multiple times. All right. So let's look. So today, as of December 19th, when we're recording this, John R. Ashcroft is our current Missouri Secretary of State. You see his picture here, his name's on everything when it comes to people getting incorporated with their businesses or filing to run for office, different things like that. He is a big records keeper. It's a very important position because records are absolutely important in the state, especially when you want to go back and utilize them for genealogies, for business purposes, of course, for legislative purposes, and so on. So we're going to go in and just kind of read about what the office of the Secretary of State is responsible for, okay? So, first and foremost, office of the Secretary of State. When you go to the Capitol, you can go to the Capitol itself, and you will find Jay Ashcroft's office, right? And that's the Secretary of State's office. However, the office of the Secretary of State is a different building. So if you go up there, you actually have the ability to get a Missouri Constitution free of charge. You can also call them, by the way, and tell them you want one, and they will send you one in the mail for free. I highly recommend everybody does that because, well, first and foremost, you get to know what your rights are, and then you have basically a direct reference where you can go at any time and figure out, what is aligned with the law and what isn't. It's also something to look at and realize how polluted and convoluted our current Constitution is. Anyways, let's get to reading. Okay. So the Secretary of State oversees numerous diverse programs and responsibilities affecting Missouri's citizens. The office is comprised of 7 divisions and maintains offices in the state capitol, the James C. Kirkpatrick State Information Center, and that's really the office of the Secretary of State that I was talking about, the building you would go to, and has branch offices in St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield. The Secretary of State is the chief elections official in Missouri, bearing responsibility for administration of statewide elections involving both issues and individuals, meaning they have oversight of initiative petitions or resolutions that go on the ballot, joint resolutions, and so on, as well as the individuals that file to run for office, and oversees local verification of petition signatures for initiative petitions. Just said that, sorry. The Secretary of State's Commissions section authenticates official acts of the governor and has authority to appoint and commission notaries public. The Office of the Secretary of State is a clearinghouse of information. The state archives preserves and makes available in several formats, including the internet, historic documents for use by researchers. This includes thousands of inquiries annually from genealogists. The Records Management Program provides for state agencies to store and retrieve inactive files at the JCKSIC, or the Office of the Secretary of State, that building, the John C. Kirkpatrick building. A companion local records program assists county and municipal governments in processing and safeguarding their important documents. And the publication section produces a number of useful books and periodicals, including the official manual, the state constitution, and rosters of the General Assembly and state, county, and district officers. In other words, these are the ones where if you want any information about the state constitution, the revisor statutes, who is current legislators or prior legislators, or county district officers, this is where you're going to get that information from. The Administrative Rules section publishes the revisions of the Code of State Regulations monthly, which lists rules and regulations promulgated by state agencies, and the bi-monthly Missouri Register. The Missouri State Library was created in 1946 as an independent agency with a board appointed by the governor. The major functions of the state library are to provide direct library and information service in support of the executive and legislative branches of Missouri state government, to provide library service to blind and physically handicapped residents of Missouri, and to promote the development and improvement of library services throughout the state. This is a quick quick issue to point out is how the Secretary of State, to his praise, I guess, is working to create new rules to ensure that pornographic material for children are not in the libraries. To me, it's a little bit too late, especially after he's getting hammered about his issues with election integrity, and then how we're about to hammer him here with his dereliction of duty for initiative petitions. But at least somebody is doing something. It's quite unfortunate that he waited so long. However, shout out to Senator Rick Bratton for putting an amendment in a bill that makes it illegal for librarians or anybody else to have that stuff in school libraries. And parents, if you are wise and forceful, you can actually call and reference this new law, thanks to Rick Bratton. And we have actually already seen success where they have removed material from the libraries that are in violation of it, right? And so make sure you utilize that. In July 1993, the state library, including the Wolfner Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, was placed under the supervision of the Secretary of State. Okay, so the library. So now that I'm thinking about this after I said it, maybe what Ashcroft's doing with the library regulation is a moot point because, well, Rick Bratton already created a law that kind of solves that as long as, local law enforcement would enforce it. That would be cool. And the district attorneys or the prosecutors would, take up the case and prosecute. That's a whole nother story. Anyways, registration of businesses is another vital duty of the Secretary of State. The corporations section handles the incorporation and reports for some 190,000 businesses licensed to do business in Missouri. Perfecting liens on business loans is the responsibility of the Uniform Commercial Code section, which receives some 137,000 filings each year. The Securities Division protects Missouri investors from fraud by reviewing proposed securities offerings and registering broker-dealers, agents, and investment advisors. Okay, so you can see that basically they have oversight of the state archives. They print office manual, state constitution, code of regulations, Missouri Register, again, the roster of the General Assembly, elected officials, their oversight of the Missouri State Library, and then registration of businesses. Okay, so this is a pretty expansive office. It has a lot of responsibility, and records are very, very important because, again, you can see that it has to do with, preventing fraud, having access to important documentation, of course, updating the laws so that people can reference those and know what's actually happening, as well as code of state regulations, so on and so forth. very important office. Now, we are specifically going to talk about initiative petition. Okay, so there were multiple different initiative petitions that were brought to the ballot, that were allowed on the ballot, that in reality, based on black and white letter law, should never have been allowed, and that falls on the Secretary of State. That is his job. We are out here working, taking care of our families, and very busy, as well as don't have law degrees, so we can get snookered easily if we don't have somebody who's trustworthy looking out for us when it comes to these type of amendments and initiative petitions. Medicaid expansion is a great example of that, as well as Amendment 3, the recreational marijuana amendment, which people still are fighting about, saying that no, it doesn't say those things that it absolutely says. They're either completely ignorant, like willfully ignorant, or they're corrupt. That's the only two things that you could say. Anyways, and then the other is the state treasurer that thankfully we voted down in the past election, but none of these should have ever been on the ballots to begin with, and we'll go into why. Okay, so in Missouri, revised statutes 116.120, the Secretary of State to determine sufficiency of form and compliance. Invalid signatures not counted. Signatures may be verified by random sampling, procedure, and requirements. Okay, so when an initiative referendum petition is submitted to the Secretary of State, he or she shall examine the petition to determine whether it complies with the Constitution of Missouri and with this chapter. Okay, so that's really the only portion that we need to talk about for what we're about to get into. Okay, signatures on the petition, that's a whole nother thing, right? You want to make sure the signatures match. That is definitely a big deal, but it's more important that the petition in and of itself complies with law, especially the Constitution. Okay, so we can see right here that it is a secretary's job to examine the petition to determine whether it complies with the Constitution. And if it doesn't comply, they are the safeguard that is supposed to stop it from coming to the ballot, right? Because we see with Amendment 3, it was 38 pages, packed with all kinds of garbage, right? And because of that, people were snookered into it because you had all of those different advertisements running over and over and over and over again. God, it was disgusting how many times those ran because the money was there. And they ran those advertisements over and over and over again, and they lied to people. Well, they obfuscated. They lied by omission of what was really on that amendment. Some people endorsed it that still to this day defend that endorsement. I don't understand that either. But anyways, nonetheless, let's keep it moving. When an initiative petition or referendum petition is submitted to the Secretary of State, he or she shall examine the petition to determine whether it complies with the Constitution of Missouri and with this chapter. Okay, so let's move on. Article 3, Section 50 of the Missouri Constitution. And, when we do this will all be in the show notes, so you guys can go and actually check it line by line yourself. But initiative petition, signatures required, form, and procedure. Initiative petitions proposing amendments to the Constitution shall be signed by 8% of the legal voters in each of 2/3 of the congressional districts in the state, and petitions proposing laws shall be signed by 5% of each voters. Every petition shall be filed with the Secretary of State not less than 6 months before the election and shall contain an enacting clause and the full text of the measure. In other words, it has to be completely transparent when given to the Secretary of State, right? So, in other words, they have complete visibility of what this amendment or proposed amendment will actually do. The petitions for constitutional amendments shall not contain more than one amended and revised article of this Constitution, or one new article which shall not contain more than one subject and matters properly connected therewith. Okay, so stop right there. Meaning, there should only be one thing, one subject applied in the amendment itself, right? And so, as an example, for the marijuana initiative, it should have simply said, and right, I'm paraphrasing, Missouri will regulate the purchase of recreational marijuana, the production and purchase of marijuana, right? So That would have been legalizing recreational marijuana. However, it said way more than that. Let's just keep moving, okay? So there's also, this is another area that we want to talk about, and actually we'll come back to this when we get to the Treasury side, or the Medicaid expansion side, because not only did it violate Article 3, Section 50 of multiple subjects in the amendment itself, but it also violated 51, conflicting laws concurrently adopting. So the initiative shall not be used for the appropriation of money other than if of new revenues created and provided for thereby for any other purpose prohibited by this Constitution, except as provided in this Constitution. Any measure proposed shall take effect when approved by a majority of the votes cast thereon. When conflicting measures are approved at the same election, the one receiving the largest affirmative vote shall prevail. Okay, so that's if there's two different things happening. So this is basically new revenues created. All right, so let's move forward. All right, this is Justia, U.S. law. So this is the case of Blunt, a 1990 case of Missourians to protect the initiative petition process versus Blunt, 1990. Okay, and so what this says is it says that basically this is just reiterating what we just read in the revised statutes and in the Constitution. This is a ruling by the Supreme Court of Missouri stating that yes, that's the case. Under the statute, the Secretary of State is charged with determining whether the petition, quote, complies with the Constitution of Missouri and with this chapter, right? So this is a ruling stating that yes, this is the way that it was supposed to go. You are responsible, Secretary of State, no matter who you are, right? It just happens to be John Jay Ashcroft. You are responsible, you are charged with determining whether the petition, quote, complies with the Constitution of Missouri. And we just saw in the Constitution piece that it should only be one amended and revised article of this Constitution, or one new article which shall not contain more than one subject, right? And matters properly connected. Okay. Now, over here, we have an opinion written by A.G. Webster back in 1991, and it's just reaffirming Secretary of State shall determine whether an initiative petition has more than one subject in violation of Article 3, right? So, now there may be a little bit of wiggle room for them right here, matters properly connected therewith, right? And so they're going to try and say, oh, well, you know, Amendment 3, this was properly connected, all 38 pages, because and this is the argument that continually happens. Well, the reason for that is because it was restating the medical marijuana initiative. Well, guess what? Maybe the medical marijuana initiative was illegal too. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. That's just logic from a logical kind of person. Anyways, so let's look at Amendment 3. Okay, and we've beat this horse, but I'm going to tell you it's not dead yet. I don't think it's dead yet. So if you go to protectmoconstitution.com, right, they do a great job of breaking it down. However, I will include links to the document itself, the actual petition document, the language of the amendment itself, so that you can go through and read it, so that, you know, when somebody inevitably says, oh, they're just, you know, picking and choosing what they want, you'll understand that, you know, well, if you can read and if you decide to, you understand that they either aren't reading or they're lying too. Okay, so you can see right here, this is actually a snippet of the language itself. So it establishes a chief equity officer. Okay, what does chief equity officer have to do with recreational marijuana? What does establishing a chief equity officer have to do with legalizing marijuana, right? Does that sound that it's properly connected therewith? I think it would be a good argument to say it wasn't. Unfortunately, seems like we missed that timeline to be able to argue it. I don't know for sure. I hope not. I hope there's something we can do about this because it's garbage. It establishes also public education programming. What does public education programming have to do with recreational marijuana? Anybody? Okay, so what does... Seriously, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know how else to be than sarcastic, because if I am not sarcastic, I'm angry, and you know, anger is not. Be angry and sin not. Okay, So right there, chief equity officer being established. That's one extra issue. Establishing public education program is another issue. It also adds punitive measures for people who bring in cannabis or marijuana from out of state lines. So it changes that. That's another issue. It also changes the expungement process. That's another issue. Okay. So criminal record expungement, sorry, is what I mean. So there's multiple different issues there. So just on forget the fact that they planted Marxism into our Constitution. Forget that. Just look at it black and white. The Constitution says that these initiative petitions should not contain more than one subject, right? And these obviously do, right? I mean, they obviously do. Let's just roll over here to the scanned document itself. Again, I have this in the show notes so that you can see it. Establish a lottery selection process to select medical marijuana licensee and certificate applicants. Why? Why is that something that has to go into the amendment? Why isn't that something that the department would do? Why are we now putting into the Constitution that this is how it has to be done? Why? Well, because they want to market on this, and this is, it's a monopoly. We already talked about this in prior videos, but this is a monopoly. Establishes a lottery selection process to select medical marijuana licensee and certificate applicants only in cases where more applicants apply. Okay. This is what they say when they say, "Oh, we just added the medical marijuana stuff in there. They had to redo it because this was an upgrade." You're absolutely right. It was an upgrade from an already bad legislative process, already something that was a travesty, already something that was against the Constitution itself. And you trying to say that makes Amendment 3 okay is the dumbest excuse I've ever heard. I mean, seriously, some people are kind of ignorant. Anyways, so the person's conviction was for a marijuana offense other than provision of minor. This person's conviction was for nonviolent. This is talking about all the different expungements options, as well as the requirements for you to be able to apply for the micro license, right? So not only is there a comprehensive license, but there's all micro license. Well, those are extra subjects too, aren't they? But if we ask questions, we get gaslit, right? We get gaslit and we get told that we don't have comprehension skills. I don't understand. All right, so Amendment 3. Amendment 3 was obviously something that had multiple different subject matter, right? But Ashcroft looked it over and still allowed it on the ballot. And Ashcroft's dad, right, Attorney General, he, to his credit, gave us Clarence Thomas, my favorite Supreme Court justice. But then he also wrote the Patriot Act. So there you go with that. So take that however you will. Point being is he comes from a lawful family, pretty much the highest law office you can have in the nation. He's not stupid. We know for a fact Jay Ashcroft is not stupid. So why did he decide to allow something that was blatantly contradictory to the law and his responsibility that he is charged with per statute, per Supreme Court ruling, and Attorney General Webster's opinion followed up after that? Why did he decide to let this on the ballot? One can only guess. I wonder if there was a lot of money behind it. Wonder if these people aren't actually doing their job. They're just rubber stampers. That's what I'm starting to understand. These people aren't smart. Well, these people aren't dumb. They're smart, but they're not elected to do their job. They're elected to be a facilitator for their special interest. They're elected to be puppeted to do what needs to be done because it's completely obvious to somebody without a law degree, right? But the ability to read and use context clues and critical thinking to see that this was illegal. This was completely erroneous, should have never been done, and Ashcroft let it happen. Not just once, though, right? Multiple times. Okay, so let's go on to the next thing. Amendment 1 was the State Treasurer Investment Authority. So this is in Ballotpedia, right? And it says a yes vote supported this constitutional amendment to allow the state treasurer to invest state funds in highly rated municipal securities and to authorize the state legislature to pass laws according to the treasurer, allowing the treasurer to invest in other reasonable and prudent financial instruments and securities. So this is still two things. Now, some people, again, will try and say that they are properly germane, if you will. What's that wording? Properly connected. That's something that could be argued, I guess, but at the same time, I don't think so, right? So let's look and see. Got some notes over here. Okay, so let's go down to this. Give me 1 second. Subjects include expansion of state treasurer's authority to invest in state cash flow assets, expansion of legislative power to override state treasurer decisions. Okay, so there you go. Those aren't connected at all. And decisions on where and what to invest state cash resources into. So at least 3 different things. And they sound like they're connected because they're all about money, but they're like different authorities that are being given, right? And so it's not saying you could expand the state treasurer's authority to invest in state cash flow assets, or you could expand the legislative power to override state treasurer decisions on where to put the money, and what to invest the resources in. So those are different, like they're actually different things, right? So again, another drop ball by Ashcroft. But thankfully, we don't have to go too hard into this because the people were smart enough to say, no, I'm not letting you spend any more money. So we voted that down. Now, Missouri Amendment 2 in August of 2020, the Medicaid Expansion Initiative. Now, if you look at this, a yes vote supports, there's 3 bullet points here, right? So 3 bullet points show us what? That there's 3 different subject matter, right? Because that's how when you write something, that is how you differentiate the subject matter, is through bullet points or paragraph lines or sentences, whatever the case is, right? So first one is expanding Medicaid eligibility in Missouri, okay? Second one is prohibit, and you don't even have to read the rest of it, okay? Because all of this doesn't matter. What matters is, what is it doing? Expanding Medicaid eligibility in Missouri. What's next? Prohibiting any additional restrictions or requirements for the expanded population to qualify for Medicaid. And then third, requiring the state to seek maximum federal funding of Medicaid expansion. 3 different subjects, 3 different pieces. And no, they are not properly connected, right? These things are 3: expanding, prohibiting, and requiring. Expanding, prohibiting, and requiring, right? If you're expanding eligibility, these things are connected by putting all the different specifications in that expansion. But then you go on and you prohibit something, and then you go on and you require something. Okay, these are 3 separate subject matters. Okay, and so that's why, too, this is Section 51. Sorry, dropped my phone. Section 51 for failing to identify funding mechanisms for the new expenditures, right? And so this violates 2 different areas of the Missouri Constitution, Article 3, Section 50 and Section 51. Okay, so we have John Jay Ashcroft, who, let's not even get started on his election integrity, dereliction of duty. But these are multiple different amendments that have come throughout the years, and it's very clear and plain. Like, to me, if I was Secretary of State, right? I'm not running for it because I don't want to run for political office, and probably wouldn't win, so I'm not going to run for anything like that. But my point is, me, a simpleton, sitting here in my room behind this wonderful Missouri flag, if I was just looking at my responsibilities in black and white and then looking at the initiative petitions and the amendments being offered, it's pretty easy for me to be like, nah, man, can't do this one. Sorry, this doesn't meet the requirements, right? When you get a new electronic toy or anything else, or you get a new computer program, or you want to do something new with this computer, with this software that I had to look up what the requirements were for me to run it effectively, right? The only difference is if I'm dumb and can't figure out the requirements, it won't work. Unfortunately, that's not the case with our Secretary of State. So these are some things that are quite easy to understand. These are things that should have been handled by our Secretary of State. Again, what is the purpose of government? The purpose of government is to promote the well-being of the people and to protect their rights, right? And so now we have issues like Medicaid expansion that we're dealing with, coming out of pocket for, right? And then we also have now equity enforcement in our Constitution, along with a lot of other punitive things added. And it's just a bunch of garbage, guys. These people aren't doing their job. That's really what it boils down to. They're not doing their job. They're not doing their job because they are being guided not to. They're being incentivized, maybe, allegedly. I don't know. I'm not saying that they're corrupt. I'm just saying that they're not doing their job, and it's pretty obvious. And these people have been well educated, and they're not doing their job, guys. So what should our conclusion be? I'll tell you what my conclusion is. I mean, firm conclusion. Jay Ashcroft doesn't deserve any other seat, any other elected position. If he's deciding to run for governor, don't do it, Jay. Jay, don't do it. We don't think you have the mental fortitude to do it, because you've dropped the ball multiple times. Look at all these amendments that you let on the ballot that in black and white shouldn't have been on the ballot, but you let them on the ballot. Should we let you govern? I don't think so. I don't think we should let you govern. I think we should let you retire. You can retire in peace. Just go away. We won't say anything else. Just go away. Put the Ashcroft name to bed. And, hopefully your daddy's achievements will overshadow your failures. I don't know. Anyways. All right, guys. So that's going to do it for today's episode of the Missouri Rhino What Show. I'm Joshua Lehman. As always, keep fighting. Stay free. For God and country. Patriots, if you're going to reclaim your nation, you need a good night's sleep. And luckily, we've partnered with MyPillow in bringing you all the resources needed to do just that. As you can see, we have partnered with Mr. Mike Lindell, Patriot of all patriots. And if you will use the link above, it's mypillow.com/RINO. It also works on the My Store platform, so mystore.com/RINO. Or you can enter the promo code right down here, RINO, at checkout. And that will give you all available discounts. And of course, you will be supporting Mike Lindell, an American-made company with American-made products. And you will also be supporting the work of your local rhino hunter. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. God bless.
War.
And so the American people decided to take over the idea of information.